The first thing that comes to mind is the importance of a team that's a really like-minded team that you can run far with. And I believe that when I started putting together what I'm doing with Simka Foundation, that was the first thing I did was put together a team. So literally, when I talk about the two things that I do, executive life coaching on one side, where we talk a lot about how to live through each month based on a biblical calendar. So I will say that I use that in coaching also, because I believe that no matter if we're faith-based or not, each month on the biblical calendar plays a big role in what's happening on the earth.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Biblical Money. I'm your host, Rabbi Rami Goldberg, and I am here with the wonderful Gayle Timberlake, who runs the Simka Foundation, where she connects Christians to the land of Israel and does a number of other ways to connect to the land of Israel and to biblical sites, and runs a number of different trips and to archaeological sites and the like. Gayle, welcome to the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here with you, Rami. I'm always just ecstatic to be in your presence. So just having any chance to visit is a big pleasure on my end.
Yes, and thankfully we've had a lot of time recently, right?
Yeah.
I was down in Austin. We did a prayer call yesterday, and so this has been great. So, Gayle, where does Israel come into your heart to start with? I mean, it's not necessarily. Some people, I guess, were kind of brought up with it, born with it, and some people. It comes later, but what's your kind of origin story as far as your connection to Israel?
Yeah, good question. Love answering this one. You know, I grew up in a home where my father was a former naval aviator. He flew planes in the Navy, and then he was a businessman. And so I grew up in a home with parents that loved the Lord. I was the youngest kid, and somehow they had come into a fuller understanding of their faith and really just became on fire for their faith. But Israel was not so much in the picture for them. And it wasn't until I was graduating from college and went on my first trip to Israel. I had been a youth leader. I'd been doing all sorts of things in the church. And when I went to Israel for the first time, I realized that there were massive amounts of my faith that I was just out of touch with because I'd never touched the land before. I'd never walked in those places where so many important things had happened. And so I came back and I was really struck by the fact that this is really important for who I am as a believer, as a Christian. And so it made sense to me to press in farther. And as a result of that, I began to realize that so many Christians don't have a true understanding of our faith. And the reason why is because we don't know a lot about the land. We know the God of the Bible, but we don't know a lot about the God of history that walked in a certain place and that set aside a piece of land. And so that's how it really began for me. And then later, I've had one foot in business and one foot in biblical archaeology, but later I went on and spent a lot of time in Israel, lived there for a while. And from then there was really no turning back.
How long did you live in Israel for?
You know, I've been there several times for extended periods of time. So I was at Jerusalem University College for a while, Hebrew U, mostly for studying because I wanted to learn more. And so I was there for different periods of time, sporadically, not for one long period of time, but I'd be there for 6 months here, 8 months there, throughout a number of years. And so that's how it worked out for me.
So you have the Simka Foundation. We'll get to that in a little bit. You're also a businesswoman. So tell us a little bit about your business. Obviously, the topic here is biblical money, but we'll get to everything. But so tell us a little bit about your business and some of how you've built that up.
Yeah, I love that. Should have brought a cup of coffee. I feel like we're sitting down there at that coffee shop where we were in Austin a while back. It's great to just be able to talk about these things. You know, I graduated from undergrad in Texas, and my degree was in communications and marketing. And so right out of school, I was in banking in downtown Dallas, and then worked with the Bankers Association in Austin, did work next to the governor's mansion and did some lobbying at the Capitol in Austin. From there, I went into marketing. So I was a chief marketing officer for a number of organizations. And what I realized is that as I began to work with entrepreneurs, CEOs, and business leaders, that what I ended up doing more than anything was really coaching. I was helping them with their marketing efforts, but I was really coaching these leaders in a lot of aspects of their life to really go farther and faster in what they were doing. So marketing has always been a passion of mine and what I did for many years, but it turned into coaching. And so for the last 15 years, I've been around boardrooms and with C-suite leaders talking about things that really matter, working with their teams to help them get equipped to go further and faster. And so that's part of what I do is I have a coaching and executive life coaching business where I have other coaches with me and we work with CEOs and leaders to try to help them get everything out of their businesses that they were intended to do.
And how much of that is kind of faith-based coaching versus it just being, you know, we're going to focus on product delivery, and are you happy and fulfilled with that? Like, you know, how much do you bring your faith into that?
You know, I think it's impossible to not bring faith into it, just because of what has happened in my life and how I see the world. But I will say that not all my clients are faith-based. So I bring my faith to it, but there are things that you know about this God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and the Judeo-Christian faith that we have that others are drawn to, even if they don't align with it yet, because there's wisdom, there's ancient wisdom in the things that come from the Bible. So I would say I'm bringing my faith into it, but I'm not trying to sway someone. I will work from the wisdom of the Bible. So the things that we know about the Bible is that rest is really important, right? So one of the things I talk about is how are you resting? You know, you have a busy, you know, to a CEO, I might say, let's look at your schedule first. Like, let's look at how you're spending your time, because I know from ancient wisdom that rest is really important. And so there has to be a time in there where you're truly resting. And this is how I do it. I choose this time frame that's been on the calendar for a long, long, long time. And it seems to have worked for a lot of for a lot of people for some millennia now. And so here's a suggestion on how you might rest. So when I say that my clients aren't necessarily Christian, I think the ancient wisdom of the Bible applies to all of us, doesn't it? And so, yeah, it's faith comes into it no matter what, because it's wise.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's so many of those principles and bringing that into your life. And some people, even if they do it in their personal life, don't necessarily want it within the business framework.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's, you know, the same in terms of like how we think about money, how we deal with our families, how we deal with those around us. You know, just yesterday, a topic came up in the live stream that I was with you. We talked about Lashon Hara, this idea of not spreading gossip, you know, not talking unfavorably about others. That's a huge topic, and it's so prevalent, not only within business places, but I mean, I have to say it's within faith systems too. Within Christianity, we have a lot to learn when it comes to that. So like, how are you framing your thoughts? How are you talking about others so that you don't fall into these traps? Because that's a really bad trap. When you start talking badly about somebody, there's nothing good that's going to come out of that. So these are, you know, just other aspects of the ancient wisdom that I think are really good. So we look at lifestyle, you know, how are you thinking? How are you framing the way that you're dealing with other people? What's your mindset? And then how can you change these incremental pieces? You know, there's Atomic Habits is a great book. And I believe that those small shifts can make just incredible changes in the way that we deal with so many aspects of life that help propel us forward. Yeah. So
Yeah.
some good
It's
tips.
it's always like how do you eat an elephant, right? It's one bite at a time. So it's
Absolutely. My
you got
marketing professor used a watermelon, which I seem to have appreciated a little bit more than an elephant, but it's true. Same concept.
yeah. So you definitely. So give me like one or two kind of like really tough challenges that you had to go through or help someone through within your business, and maybe how you use godly principles, or even not. Maybe it was just godly inspired to come up with a solution for a particular business.
Yeah, good questions. I'll have to think about that. I think the first thing that comes to mind, there's so many. The first thing that comes to mind is the importance of a team that's a really like minded team that you can run far with. And I believe that when I started putting together what I'm doing with Simka Foundation, that was the first thing I did was put together a team. So literally, and when I talk about the two things that I do, executive life coaching on one side, um, where we talk a lot about how to live through each month based on a biblical calendar. So I will say that I use that in coaching also, because I believe that no matter if we're faith-based or not, the each month on the biblical calendar plays a big role in what's happening on the earth. But I'll have to say that when I started Simka Foundation, one of the things that happened right off is I got a team. And so I was in Florida at the time. I put a team together, and life happened. I think that so many times we have big plans, big ideas. I had been to Israel. I came back and I set about putting together tools to help Christians understand more about the Christian faith of the God of history that I spoke about earlier, not just the God of the Bible, but what are the customs and traditions of the earliest Christians. So I gathered a team and we held a lot of events in Florida. Life came in. I really set it aside for a long time until 2022, or the end of that year, we put together another team. And so I think that what I realized in between those times is that the importance of having a team to run with you that has the same vision, the same values that you have. So that was one of the things that happened to me is when I needed to set aside Simka Foundation, or what ended up being Simka Foundation. It was started out being called Festival in a Box, set it aside for a time. What took me longer to pick back up again was not having a team beside me. And I would say that that's one of the most important things for leaders, to get people beside you that are running with you, that have the same values, that can see a vision that you're talking about and have them come alongside you. So, I would say that that was one of the things that happened to me that made me realize just the importance of that like-mindedness in visions and running forward with a business, an organization, a ministry, whatever it is. And that was a really important one for me.
So I guess then you're not promoting diversity, right? DEI, like you want like-minded people. So, but
You can have diversity in
um,
those that you serve, but those that you're running with, you have to have the same mindset. Diversity in people you serve all the time. And my clients in my executive life coaching business, they are as diverse as you can imagine. Yeah, as diverse as you can imagine for sure.
so you talked about a team. I just know for me personally, when I was starting my business, so I had my partner and both of our wives were involved. So we definitely had that kind of core team. But there still was this sense of when you are building something of loneliness. And I actually got together a couple of friends and we used to sit down for breakfast every couple of months just to like talk shop, because you're like, okay, I can't do this all by myself. I feel like there's like a lot of loneliness that comes when you're running a company, because you don't know if you're making the right choices and you're affecting other people and you're affecting a whole bunch of other things that happen.
I think you can get taken out easily when you isolate. So when you don't do it with other people, it's easy to get taken out. I was speaking at an event recently, and I was telling this story about going fishing. I was in Baja California, and I went tuna fishing, and it was an interesting experience. We had gone into this area of the water, and I cast my line where the guide said to cast the line, and I caught a tuna, began to reel it in. And I don't know if you've ever been tuna fishing before, but it is an arduous process. Literally for 20 minutes, I'm reeling that fish in, and it has taken every muscle group that I have to pull it in. So I'm pulling in this tuna, just pulling in, just like all the strength that I have. I'm bracing my feet against the boat, pulling back with my strength of my torso, get it really close. We can see it on the side of the boat. And my guide runs up with the net and also takes the pole, asks me if he can take the pole. I say, sure. He nets the fish. Well, he gets close to netting the fish. We can see the blue glistening side of this tuna. It was absolutely beautiful. And all of a sudden, you could hear the line, zing. And way out in the water, you could see a sea lion jumping up in the water. The next thing I knew, the head of my tuna was blasting up in the water. The sea lion again, other parts of my tuna flying up in the water. And that tuna got taken out like that. And I think that oftentimes when we as leaders try to do things on our own, that's exactly what can happen to us. We can get taken out because we need that body of people around us to like further visions of what we have in business and ministry and organizations that come together so that that doesn't happen. So that sea lion probably had an eye on my tuna for a long time and finally went after it and took it out. And fortunately, I was able to cast again and brought one all the way in. That sea lion was full after my first tuna. So I'd already fed it a snack. And the thing is that while I was reeling it in, the fish itself was getting tired because it was fighting for its life too. And so when the sea lion came in, it came in while it was tired because it had been just struggling, all along the way. And so that this goes back to that key of rest, that rest is such an important tool in the toolkit of leaders, I believe.
Yeah. So let's talk about you. You start a business, you're doing your consulting, and you have the Simka Foundation. Tell us a little bit about the Simka Foundation, or Simka, because you want to make sure that it's easy for Christians to say, not with the sound. That should be Simcha. But the Simka Foundation, and what is it that you guys, what's your mission, what's your vision? And give us some of the success stories.
Yeah, I love that question. I had a lot of training. I ended up getting a master's at a theological college in just plain biblical history, and then ended up getting a PhD in Second Temple Judaism. So really customs and traditions of the first non-Jewish believers in this rabbi that we call Jesus, Yeshua. And so when I, came back from Israel that first time, I told you I just had this passion to help equip Christians get into an understanding of the fullness of their faith. And so Simka Foundation started, and you asked me some of our success stories. Before it started, I had an opportunity really to kind of be taken under the wing of an Orthodox rabbi in San Antonio in Texas, and have conversations almost on a weekly basis to answer a lot of questions that I had. On the Christian side, there are a lot of questions that we have that can only be answered from the Jewish side. There are a lot of things that we don't know from Christians that we can only learn from I believe, from Judaism now. And so some of the successes that we've had is in these groups that we gather together. We have groups that we gather every week to celebrate Shabbat and talk about the Parsha, or we talk about this week in biblical history. We've had a book that we put together called the Shabbat Guide, sent to God TV and sent to the donors in that space so that they could learn more about what Shabbat's all about from a Christian perspective. Some gatherings are probably our most successful thing. We gather when we take groups overseas to Turkey, to Saudi Arabia, to Israel. We gather on a weekly basis with groups that gather for Shabbat in different states around in the United States. And then we hold events. So in Austin, we're holding events right now for the purpose of gathering Christians to stand with Israel and with the Jewish community in our area. And so we bring in speakers, we have rabbis, we have politicians, we'll have pastors come and speak. And so I would say that's one of our big wins, is just the community that we're building and getting together Christians who can align with Israel and with the Jewish population. So that's one of the things that's been great doing.
Wow.
Not sure if that answered your question, but there you have it.
No, it is. I mean, there's so much. I mean, particularly now where there is a huge kind of breakdown, backlash against Israel, against the Jewish people. Anti-Semitism is on the rise. For people to actually stand up and say, no, that never again is now, is so critical. I think also, yeah,
absolutely. I will say that for us outside of Israel, I would say, the problem for us isn't the missiles. The problem is the lie. And so many have believed a lie for so long within Christianity that we don't really know what's the truth anymore. And there's these subtle parts of anti-Semitism that many wouldn't even see as anti-Semitic. Let's just take language. So we know that the language of the day in Jerusalem and in Israel, which is my area of study for my PhD, would have been Hebrew. There would have been Greek coming through because you have some trade routes happening. There would have been some Aramaic that would have been used for other instances. But within the communities, they're going to be speaking Hebrew. And in many seminaries and theological colleges, it's not taught that way. It's taught that Aramaic was the language of the day. Some even teach that there's Greek. I was speaking to a group yesterday and with one very adamant pastor, no, it had to be Greek. They were speaking Greek. So we have a lack of knowledge of the truth for many things about just the reality on the ground in Israel for the time of the Savior that we call the Savior. That's really important for Christians to understand in order to understand the culture of the time and the culture of the rabbi that is called Yeshua. So I believe that, it's anti-Semitism. It can be very blatant. October 7th, I was scheduled to fly to Israel 10 days later. And of course, all that changed. But then there's this subtle anti-Semitism. And I believe that within Christianity, that's what needs to be gone after. And so the more Christians can learn just about the customs of the first century and the traditions of Judaism, I think that those are important. So we spend a lot of time building relationships with vendors and with distributors to get information out, to get tools out. We've built an app. And so we've worked with, our platform to be able to build an app to teach. We have a partner with ICEJ, the International Christian Embassy in Jerusalem, and top scholars. Great organization. So some of the top scholars from there and from around the world, we've gathered together to be able to present a lot of information to kind of break those lies. So I believe for us, it's not the missiles, it's the problem, it's the lie. That's the problem that gets to be broken on this end.
Yeah, there's a great book by Tricia Miller, who is part of CAMRA, which stand for something about the accuracy and reporting in the Middle East. And her book is all about the book of Esther and how there are all these different versions, which I didn't even know. I mean, you have the Hebrew version and there's a Greek version and and depending on which version you have, it could become incredibly anti-Semitic, meaning maybe the book of Esther can be misread anti-Semitic. The Jews just got into power, and then they wanted to genocide against the people. But then she showed how there are other versions that have certain verses thrown in that really turn the Jews into into the devil over in that story. So it's really really crazy that it's within the text, which, as you said, the text of Hebrew was the only text that was being used. I mean, and that's pretty clear. So, or Aramaic, a little Greek, but yeah, not more than that.
Absolutely. I think that one thing would help Christians a lot. Like even in seminaries, Greek is really honed in on because the New Testament ended up being written in Greek. But of course, all the thinkers who wrote that material, which by the way is one of the foremost instances we have of the history of that time frame, is in the New Testament. Like we can learn so much about New Testament Jewish customs because of the New Testament, but it was originally written in Hebrew because they're all Jews that write it. So they're not going to write directly into Greek. It's written first in Hebrew and then translated into these other languages. So, even like idioms can get missed when they're translated into another language. I think about simple idioms, we might say it's raining cats and dogs. Well, it's not really cats and dogs falling from the sky. It's an idiom to say it's raining really hard. So those are throughout the text that was originally written in Greek in the New Testament. But the translation into Greek, we've lost a lot of those. So an amazing scholar, Brad Young, has taken the text back into Hebrew, and I know Brad, and then taken it straight from Hebrew into English, which is such a gift to the world. So the Hebrew Heritage Bible is one of those that I believe is a blessing to Christians to be able to see, what are those really showed up, all these idioms, even some humor shows up that we wouldn't have known about without his scholarship, and I appreciate him a lot.
Do we have those early versions of the Hebrew of the books within the New Testament that were written in Hebrew originally?
It's said that we do, and I am not an expert in this, but there's another scholar who has said that one of the books, which, there's 4 Gospels, and one of the Gospels we think we have in the original Hebrew. And so there's a lot of work to be done on that. Those old manuscripts are just so valuable. So that's the one that I do know about that we can go back to and glean information from. And until then, we have brilliant scholars who just take it back to the Hebrew and then pull it back into the Greek. And
something I like to always point out to my Christian friends is when it comes to Moses, right? What did Noah build? He built an ark, right? And what was Moses placed into? He was placed into a basket, right? But when Christians read it, that one was Noah was in a boat, and this one was in a basket, but it's actually the same Hebrew word. They're both using the word teva. And so once you have that same word, well, why did the Bible, why did God, when he was giving it, choose to use this same word? There's obviously some sort of connection, and that happens all over. And the word ark, which comes up by the Holy Ark, where the commandments were put, that has nothing to do with Noah's Ark. That's so. But
these are valuable
things like that,
things. Really valuable,
and it's really, really unbelievable. Really something that's so necessary. So you run all these trips. What are some of the highlights of you've been to Turkey? Are you scared to go? I'm curious if you were scared to go to Turkey or Saudi Arabia. Like, is that something that you're nervous walking around? I would be, but could be worse.
Well, and you would have reason to. Your passport, even with you having 2, you would have reason to be. And I probably one of those. Don't look like it, but probably some Indiana Jones in here, and just love going to these places. So we go with the group to Saudi Arabia. That's been there 33 times. And so, yeah. And, Turkey, the same. It's really part of the heritage. I'm wishing for the day, Rami, where I can take you to Saudi Arabia, because, it's part of your heritage, right? And more than mine, to you first, and then to me. But yeah. So I forget to get scared. I guess maybe I have a missing link inside of me. I'm not really sure, but I literally kind of forget to get scared. I'm more concerned about making sure that everybody in my group is getting where they need to at the right time.
Yeah, the food and their pillows was
That's right.
just the right down.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, and even, the desert there at night is amazing. And of course, the desert in Israel at night is amazing, isn't it? It's absolutely beautiful. The stars, and it's as if you can hear almost the echo of the words that were spoken to Abraham. Look up at the sky, look at the stars. And, those words that he heard that were so meaningful for your faith system and my faith system, that's so interlinked. I believe that sitting under the stars in those places is just an experience not to be missed. So we always make sure that wherever we are, we're under the stars at some point, to talk and to share experiences and to share life together. Yeah, I love it.
Right. You have the stars of the sky, and you're in the desert, so you got the sand of the earth.
Absolutely.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
I always complain to my wife, and this is the environmental side of me, but I'm like, all this light pollution that's out there that you can't see the stars, and there's something amazing. I'll send you a picture of just when you don't have light pollution. For the one time I was in South Africa, and I got this unbelievable picture. So
you spent time in South Africa?
I was there a couple of years ago with my family. Yeah, it was really something amazing. Thankfully, I don't know if I could go back, just because South Africa as a government is really not no friend of Israel and the Jewish people, even though I think the majority of South Africans do stand with Israel, but they have a pretty rotten government.
I'll tell you that they do. So I lived in South Africa. I finished my PhD there, actually, and spent time only once in the Karoo. Was that where you were when you saw the stars so well? So the Karoo...
We were in Madikwa.
Oh, okay. So the Karoo is between Johannesburg and Stellenbosch. So I was in Stellenbosch at the university there. But if you go north of there, there's this area called the Karoo. Such an unusual topographical area. It has really unusual land formations. It's kind of like Cappadocia, where we go in Turkey, which is where the earliest church lived underground because of the persecution. We take hot air balloons there in Cappadocia in Turkey. But this place in the Karoo in South Africa, you see the other side of the hemisphere and the stars. And that was an amazing place to see stars as well. Just incredible. And amazing people in South Africa. And I will report to you that, having lived there, there's so many Christians that stand with Israel. So many who, in fact, the first night that I arrived in South Africa to do work at the university for my PhD, I was invited by a group of Christians to come speak for a Shabbat evening, a gathering, a dinner at night around a table in a home. And they brought extra people. They probably had 30 people there to sit at tables and eat. And I thought, wow, Christians there even do Friday night Shabbat. So
wow, so amazing.
It is. It really is amazing.
So if someone wants to come on one of your tours to Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, how do they reach you?
Yeah, simkafoundation.org. So we do spell Simka easy for us as non-ch speakers. So we make the Hebrew easy. So it's just SIMKA, simkafoundation.org. There's a travel tab, and there's also events tab. So travel is easy to get to. We have people sign up there, and then we send out information about whatever trip they're interested in or whatever new trip is coming up. Yeah, it's a great way to connect. And we have tools that we give out too. I believe that what we're doing this year is we started a wall calendar that starts in Nisan. Oh, but we'll start it in Rosh Hashanah this year. So we'll have a wall calendar available starting in on Rosh Hashanah, and it'll go for 18 months. I think Israel 365 also has one. So we use the
one for your kitchen, one for your dining
That's
room.
right.
That's okay. We can have.
That's right. We use incredible artwork from an Israeli artist, and then have other products that that we're able to offer with his artwork. Just absolutely breathtaking artwork for that wall calendar. So that'll be up on the website soon as well. Yeah, it's good. And my coaching website is just my name, drgayletimberlake.com.
Okay, and that's for any size company, the executives, CEOs, and the like. Basically, the same people who I've been interviewing
Yes.
on Biblical Money.
I'll keep sending them your way.
Wonderful.
So
Gayle,
good.
it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time and meeting with me today. I appreciate it. Appreciate everything that you're doing. God should continue to bless your efforts.
Thank you, Rami, and same with you. God bless you for who you are, what you do. I appreciate what you do with Israel 365, what you do with your business, and what you're doing with this podcast to be able to get some incredible information out to a lot of leaders. So, yeah, God bless you and what you're doing.